I'm Stephen Cooksey, the leader of Mull Valley District Council, and it's my pleasure to speak to you about VE Day. Thank you to Captain Martin Howling for reminding us of the relevance of VE Day. I'm going to bring a slice of the celebrations from the time as recorded in our local newspapers in 1945. Village celebrations of the Great Victory culminated in a happy event on VE Day +1. Taking advantage of the natural arena on Westcott Common, the 17th Dorking Westcott Boy Scouts, under their scouter Mr. A.S. Brewer, went to work and organised the show. First, the great bonfire was built after turf had been removed, on a base 12 foot square and towering to a good 20 foot at the apex. The wood, as an economy measure, was composed entirely of trees which had fallen in the Battle of the Dump, a battle that Westcott remembered well, so that no sound timber was wasted. An arena was roped off to make a dancing green, and scouts, cubs, guides and brownies extended an open invitation to everyone to join in the fun. Community singing was followed by dancing, more songs, folk dances, and at 6:30 p.m. the bonfire was lit. Lieutenant Colonel R.W. Barclay spoke of the real purpose of the celebration, reminding children that in years to come they must remember not only the bonfire, but rather the great victory Britain and her allies had won. The fun continued until midnight, when many paused to watch the marvellous display of searchlights weaving fantastic patterns over London's sky. There were 100 children in the Parkway party, where chief organisers were Mr. and Mrs. Petts and Mrs. Slope. They were assisted by many of the parents, and all the Parkway residents had contributed food and tables for a beautiful al fresco tea. The tables were set out along the pathway and loaded with a fine display of jellies, blancmanges, cakes and sandwiches. Then there came games, music, a tug of war and races with money prizes. And from a wooden platform set on top of pig food bins and with an air raid shelter as the background, Mr. Stevens, the conjurer, gave the children mirth and mystery in a display of magic. Afterwards, each child was given an orange and more nice things to eat. Guest of honour at the party was Private H.W. Duval, a returned prisoner of war, who came home last Saturday. He had been a prisoner for 5 years. Before the war, he was a van driver with Mrs. Loyens. After the children had gone to bed, the grown-ups enjoyed a dance in the street until late in the night. Mr. F.J. Bell attended the party to bring the good wishes of Dorking Council. About 60 children from Mount Street and adjoining roads celebrated in Mount Street. Children sat down to an enormous spread. Guest of honour was ex-prisoner of war Mr. Dipple, who arrived home last week after 5 years' absence. The victory cake was made by Mrs. Clarkey. After teen games, children were entertained by a conjurer. Community singing was led by Mr. Hunt on the accordion and Mr. Knight with his mandolin. Each child was given an ice cream and a shilling. At the end of the party, Auld Lang Syne and the national anthem was sung. A dance was held in the evening. Thank you all for being part of the celebrations this year.